Remember, going to remember to record tonight. Hello and welcome everybody. We're just going to take a minute to get everybody in and out of the weight room, and we'll get started in just a sec. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Carrie Davenport. I just found a photo that Carrie Davenport, I'm assuming it was the same Carrie Davenport, took of me kayaking the Sandy Gorge in 2014. I was showing it to Teresa Grider the other day. I was like, look, this is the last time I ran Revenue Rapid. It's 8 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but was it on Facebook?
Yes, it was I think Tom DeCure posted it, and I just remembered. I was like, I remember I had a really good line, and Tom DeCure said something about it. And then I found the photo, and I was like, huh, some guy named Carrie Davenport took it. And then here you are tonight, which is fun. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
We must have voted together 8 years ago. I just don't remember. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just a sec. I've got a few more people coming into the waiting room. I want to make sure I get everybody in. And just as a matter of course, I've gone ahead and I've muted everyone. I know a lot of you have got your videos off, which helps when we're sharing video. We don't have video to share tonight, so if you would like to show your faces, I know that always helps the speakers to feel like they're speaking to someone, so feel free to show your faces. You're a friendly bunch, handsome bunch. Hi there. And we'll just give it one more minute. I've got a few more folks coming into the weight room. And then we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. All right. I see Antoinette. Perfect. We've got Adam must be still with us, even though I can't see him. Oh, there you are.
Yes, yes.
Because yes, you're being active in the chat, so you haven't left. Fantastic. A few more people to let in, and then we'll get going. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Deborah Kane. If you don't know me, I am the president of the Lower Columbia Canoe Club. We're the host of tonight's discussion on diversifying paddle sports. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I know we've got a lot of club members on the line, but I also see a bunch of folks that I don't think I necessarily recognize. So if you want to as we're getting started, just pop a note in the chat. Let us know, where you're zooming in from. I know this is a topic that's of interest to folks, all across the country. So thank you, those of you who are joining us and not necessarily, frequent members of the Lower Columbia Canoe Club talks. We really love seeing new faces. So thank you for joining us. A little bit of background on the impetus for this talk. And excuse me, so sorry. I'm also keeping a half eye on the weight room. So as I mentioned, I'm Deborah. I'm the president of the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, and the Lower Columbia Canoe Club. Oh my gosh, it's a club that exists in Portland, Oregon. Our members are made up largely of folks in the greater Portland metropolitan area. We're canoers, we're kayakers, we're suppers, we're IKers. And the club has existed for like 50 or 60, 65 years. It's a very, old and long-standing club. I'm a relatively new member of the club. And, when I do things, I get enthusiastic. And so I probably came in as this, bright-eyed, eager, enthusiastic new member of the club. And it wasn't long before Teresa Grider, who has been a longtime board member of the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, convinced me that I should help, that I should join the board. And the position of president was available because long-standing, or long-serving, I should say, President Mark was stepping down, Mark Scantlebury, after many, many years of service. And I thought, okay, well, I'll join the club as the president. And I came in as the president. And my big agenda, and this was only last year, so 2021, at the beginning of 2021, my big agenda was I want to make the Lower Columbia Canoe Club really welcoming and a safe space for female boaters, because that was the lens that I brought to my role on the board. I thought, well, I go out boating and I get intimidated by the guys, and I don't necessarily always feel, welcome when I show up to paddle. And so I brought this lens of I want the Lower Columbia Canoe Club to be welcoming to women. And I started having that conversation with board members, and very quickly board members said, well, that's all well and good, Deborah, but, might we not take this opportunity? We've got, new leadership coming in, and you said you want to work on making the club more accessible to women. What about making it more accessible and welcoming and inviting to everyone? Women aren't the only people who don't necessarily feel welcome at our events. And it was such a great discussion for us to have at the board level, and I immediately understood exactly what they meant. I understood what it felt to not necessarily, I understood what it meant to feel like the only, from my lens as being a woman, and I came with lots of ideas about how to address that, but I had no idea, no context, what it felt like to be the only as a person of color, nor did I have any idea, really, what the club might do to help. Or to support more folks of color joining, not even joining the club, literally just getting into the sport. And so with nothing but curiosity and lack of knowledge, I set out in early 2021 to try to figure out what the Lower Columbia Canoe Club might be able to contribute. And you can't start asking questions about what's going on to Diversify Paddlesports and not run into our two speakers. I ran into Antoinette Lee Toscano, I think really quickly, on a Facebook group. There's well, interestingly enough, given that I came through the lens of being a female boater, hate to say this, guys, but there's a really wonderful female-only Facebook group where women can, ask great questions and support each other in their, paddling journeys. And so I went to that group and very quickly ran into Antoinette, and just absolutely, we had one of those like online fall in love with each other relationships. I actually consider Antoinette a friend now, more just, from all of our email exchanges and our Zoom calls together. And so I'm absolutely thrilled to have Antoinette on the line tonight. Antoinette, for those that don't know, hopefully you read her bio, but was one of two people who started the Diversify Whitewater events that I think started in 2020. So when I stumbled upon you in 2021, you were just off a relatively successful launch year, and looking to expand the Diversify Whitewater events, which I know that you and Adam talk more about. Of course, if Diversify Whitewater was going to expand out of their home state of Colorado, we in the Pacific Northwest wanted to be among the folks that hosted an event. And who better than to host that event than Adam Edwards, who in his own right had been doing a lot of work locally and nationally with NRS, with the Just Add Water campaign. And it was, in his own way, asking questions about, how do we diversify paddle sports? What role do I have to play? How can we do this? What help do I need, et cetera, et cetera. So the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, along with other canoe clubs and kayak clubs in the Pacific Northwest, we served as a sponsor of the Diversify Whitewater event that Adam, along with two other co-sponsors, Carla
and James Good.
Thank you, hosted this summer. And you all ended up doing one in the Portland area and also one up in Seattle, as I understand it. And I remember at the time that, after the events, you were you were reflecting on the outpouring of community support, right? That, all these folks came out to help, but I don't know that we have necessarily participated in a conversation about, gosh, what next? And what did we learn from that? And more specifically, what did you learn from that? And what do you want the community to know? So tonight is really that opportunity. So with that, I think what we'll do is I want to hand it over to you, Adam. Antoinette is going to help me moderate. And one of the things that Antoinette said in that very supportive, welcoming ladies Facebook group, when we posted information about tonight's talk, she wrote a little comment and she said, I just want to clarify it's a super safe space tonight. Please ask your questions of our speakers. There's no question that you couldn't or shouldn't ask. We want to have a really, rich dialogue, discussion, and in that spirit, you should know that if you have questions, as either Adam or Antoinette are speaking, you can just pop them into the chat. Antoinette's going to be watching the chat while Adam is speaking, and Adam and I will do the same while Antoinette is speaking. We're going to go pretty free form. We might hold questions till the end. We might interject and get a few key questions answered as we go. So with that, we should go. Adam.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Edwards. I am also in Portland, Oregon. I've been here for about 15 years now. I came here for college, attended Portland State, got into kayaking and paddle sports in general at that time. I think it's here in 2006. And I do a lot of stuff. I'm a kayaker, I'm a surfer, I was a raft guide for a long time, ski, snowboard, climb, model, act, take photos, and I'm an arborist professionally, so I do urban tree care is my current day job for the last 5 years. So in that, with all of those things, different things I do, have a lot of different lenses on, specifically, I mean, obviously I live in Portland, so how the Portland metro area interacts with how I interact with people, how people interact with me. And we're kind of here to talk about the outdoor access and issues of equity and diversity and acceptance and access in the paddle sports community. And so I've been a part of the paddle sports community for about since 2009, 2010. I actually attended, like I said, Portland State Outdoor Program or University, and I got in their outdoor program, and they have one of the best outdoor programs in the country at the time, and still. And while I was there, it was a very student and mentor-led program. So we had some great mentors there, Jordan Birmingham and Steve White, that I learned everything I could do. Went on to Wet Planet in the Gorge here in White Salmon and did their guide school, and then I moved to Alaska for a while. So the breadth of my interaction with the paddle sports community has been, in the vernacular, I've pushed rubber. I've had a very good reputation for swimming a lot when I first started kayaking. With my life background, that really didn't bother me much. I also learned to surf before I started kayaking, so swimming in whitewater wasn't that big a deal to me. It should have been, but since I was surfing on the Oregon coast, I was like, it's not that bad. It is. But that said, having I'm still relatively young, about to be 35 this year. So 12 years of that life, I've been kayaking. And so that's just a small tip of the iceberg of how far I'd like to take my tenure in paddle sports and the experiences I would like to have. But in the 12 years that I've been in paddle sports, and the last maybe 5 or 6, when I've kind of been spending more time in either instructing or I would say instructing first, and then starting to do more high level advanced kayaking. And then in the last couple of years, spending more time examining my relationship with kayaking and how I interact with people. That's kind of where the article I dropped in the chat there kind of came out of, is not a summation of all of that experience, but it's of the last 2 or 3 years where I've been actively checking in on my space in the paddling community and being like, oh, what do I see? What can I contribute? And that comes out of it. There's I was raised with a need to give something back, especially when I feel like I'm doing something that is very self-focused. I love kayaking. I'm not denigrating it, but at the same time, paddle sports is definitely, for a long time for me, it was a very selfish activity. And when I came out of that, one of the biggest things I was thinking about is like, I don't see a lot of folks like me. I also don't feel like, outside of diversity and gender, I'm not giving much back to my community. And how I got good at kayaking and old paddle sports was a bunch of people took the time to teach me and spend countless hours teaching me how to do these things on their free time. Took me out, watched me swim, helped me find gear, all this stuff. And while I did do that for people throughout my time in paddle sports, I really didn't feel like I was using the breadth of my abilities to do so. So where Deborah was saying, one of the things we didn't get to discuss after the event last summer was my feelings coming out of that. And there was a lot of things. That's also where this article came from. It was a amazing experience. We had last summer, we did an event on the Sandy River at Oxbow Park. It's a very beautiful park in Portland, managed by our Metro governing body. It's got an amazing, you can paddle to and from the put in and take out in the same park. You got a lot of different spots to go down. There's bathrooms and jungle gyms and all those things. So it's just a very nice, soft entry into the world of paddle sports. It's also one of the areas in the Portland Metro where we have a lot of accidents because it's so easy access. And they tend to be people of color or people of lesser socioeconomic status, things like that, where they're just, they're out having a good time. They don't necessarily have the full dial-in that many of the people in our community would have around a resource like that. The water's super cold, there's wood, you can't just go dive into it, et cetera, et cetera. So out of that event, first and foremost was we had an almost 1-to-1 ratio of volunteers to participants. Like the support from the Portland and Seattle communities was stellar. And we're in the side note is we're in the process of planning events for this summer and fall, and already the outpouring of support is pretty much the same, if not more. So everyone should, everything we take out of this talk, definitely learn and grow from it, but at the same time, people are showing up and it is seen and it is appreciated. The other things I took out of that event were I didn't do enough marketing. 40, a 1-to-1 ratio of volunteers to participants. We filled up pretty much both sessions. We taught kayaking, canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding, and rafting. And both the Portland and Seattle events, one of the biggest, wasn't even a critique. There's a lot of folks showed up and I only heard about this yesterday because a random friend who has a friend that paddles told me about it. If you posted in this group or you posted over here, you wouldn't have known what to do with how many people would have shown up for this. And in my planning for events this year, I, through some mutual friends, was introduced to a community group in Portland that did the exact same event last year and actually held 2 or 3 more on their own with community funding and county funding. And so I'm trying to work with them this year. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but there are people doing whatever you're thinking about in life, somebody's doing it. And we do have unique ideas, but as a species, there's definitely some overlap. And with certain ideas, there's definitely some overlap. So that's something I've turned around this year and spent more time trying to research, who out there is doing this thing. And that kind of comes into some stuff I can talk about later and we can discuss. But when I'll say that. people are doing the same work, and it's fun to find them. The next thing I found in that, and one of the things I was probably a 2 or 3 reflection that led me to that point with our events, or with that event and things I've taught, is keeping it simple. I remember during my tenure as a kayak instructor, definitely in the beginning and definitely in the middle, one of the critiques of my instruction was I made things difficult, or I was not necessarily most willing to accommodate certain like needs or discomforts and things like that. And that's definitely a byproduct of many of the worlds I inhabit professionally and personally, where I'm a big Black man that was raised on working really hard. I'm a very resilient family. What my familial culture is like love one another, but put your head down and work hard. And that doesn't translate well for everyone. That doesn't work for everyone in their learning. And like we know at this point in the 21st century that there are different learning styles, there's different communication styles, all of that. But we all still have to learn that lesson. So one of the things I brought into the events I've been working on and the projects I've been working on in the past and currently is trying to keep it as simple as possible. And that's something we did with the events last summer. And that was actually well received because a lot of folks, as much as however many whitewater kayakers there are in the room I'm speaking to you, we are like the 0.01% of paddle sports, for better or worse. If the census took a measure of who kayaks in a year, it's who takes their boat out the garage once or twice a year and goes paddling on a lake, has a wonderful day. That's a kayaker, the same as the kayaker that does 6 days a week, dawn patrols, and double on the weekend. But we are the minority, but we have a disproportionate amount of experience. So that kind of puts us in a weird spot when we're trying to communicate with other paddlers about how fun it is or how to do it. We make things complicated because our sport is very complicated. So even in this year's events, I'm actually we're partnering with Diversify Whitewater. I'm also trying to do more just paddle sports events where we go down to the Willamette, get a bunch of paddle boards, some sit on top kayaks, show people how to have a good time. Don't worry about how to do anything except spin the boat around, and remember that you need to put on sunscreen if you decide to take a nap on the kayak. So using those as a jump off, those are kind of like the big things I learned is like there's always someone doing this work out there that you can partner with or lend support, and figuring out how to keep it simple. And kind of going from there, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. We can I shared an article that I wrote at the end of last year talking about these same things. And out the gate, the big one with all paddle sports, and just kind of bang through these first 4 bullet points, but obviously the sport is not cheap. That doesn't mean that your participants don't have money. That doesn't mean that there aren't ways to find used gear and things like that. But there's the actual cost, like even we'll take going into whitewater kayaking. If you have for those that live in the Portland and Pacific Northwest area, like the I-5 corridor between Southern Oregon and Northern Washington, we are in a unique part of the country that's only mirrored, say, near Boise or parts of the Southeast, where there are a lot of kayakers. There's a lot of gear here. There's a lot of outdoor stores that sell used gear. Colorado has that as well. California has some of that with the CWC collective getting more established in there and having shops, and there are kayak shops throughout the state. But the Northwest, Idaho, mountain towns, we are in a unique position to do these things where you're like, yeah, no, it's not that expensive to get into, but that's just because there's so many people already doing it here. So, instead of $3,000 to get into a sport, we may only have to pay like 1,000. That's still a lot of money for something that you have no idea how to do, don't know where to go. You definitely probably need a car unless there's a river in your town or there's a lake in your town. And how can you do it safely? So then there's just the layers of just financial barrier, regardless of if you have the money or not, can compound pretty quickly once you leave those areas. And that runs for everything. Like it can be kayaking, surfing, trail running can be expensive if you want to get good shoes and good gear. And then like, do you want to track your heart rate? Or cycling, which is a very reasonably accessible urban activity. Like you can get a really cheap bike for sure, but then maintaining it, knowing how to maintain it, finding good bike mechanic, things like that. We kind of go from there into the fact that obviously the cost of entry to sports isn't limited to money. I use kayaking to frame a lot of stuff for me just because it's my easy sport, but surfing is the same. I was a trad climber for a long time. It's the same. These are all legacy sports where your options for learning how to do it are you either pay a fair amount of money to take classes or you find somebody to teach you how to do it and you pay in social capital. So either way, that's a big investment. You're either spending hundreds or thousands of dollars that you're working however many days a week to get that money and then spend all your free time learning how to do this new activity that's very uncomfortable because you haven't tried it. Or you're making friends with people that you don't know very well out the gate and sharing very emotionally and physically intense experiences, depending on what the sport is. And like, when I say that, I flash immediately to like hard climbs, hard surfs, and hard kayaking, but like emotionally and physically intense is different for everybody. It depends on health, personal emotional care. What do you have? High social anxiety, things like that. I have high social anxiety. I would rather paddle class 5 than go to a dinner party with a bunch of people I don't know, like 110% of the time. That's easier for me. My heart rate, my Garmin tells me my heart rate is higher at the dinner party than it is while paddling class 5. So everyone is different in that respect. Paddle sports, though, especially, is very much a legacy sport. The more complicated the sport gets, there are a lot of the easier access ones as far as the technical skills that aren't necessarily legacy sports. Like most people can figure out how to paddleboard in a way that works for them. Most people can figure out how to kayak or raft on flat water in a way that works for them. And that is another thing to remember, is that's not wrong. Like if you see somebody out trying something and it's very, very dangerous and like you're like, oh, you're going to put the T-grip through your teeth, that's a bad idea, or you're going to entangle yourself in that line you're towing off the back. Definitely, that's something we can talk to folks about. But approaching those situations in a way where you're like, this might be working for them because they don't know this, but it's working for them. And it probably has been working for them for a while. So I find that personally that I try to come back to a lot whenever I am offering advice to people, excuse me, I don't know or haven't, asked me to instruct them in something. The next thing that I have found in critiques of my instruction and critiques of my interaction with people is the cost of entry to any of these things is emotional. How we talk to one another when we're well versed in a sport, how we treat one another when we're well versed in an activity is very different than how people who haven't done the thing treat each other. There's just it's imagine all the things, if you have siblings, you would say to your siblings or your partner or your best friends. And then imagine the things you say to strangers in the same context. Like it's a pretty easy parallel as far as like we just speak differently to one another, and there's a base understanding that we often assume other folks have. And it goes beyond terminology. It's just the ground level of how we communicate with one another. There's a lot of assumptions that are made. Right now, one of the hot button topics in my extended friend group is how we talk about certain runs with people, certain whitewater kayaking runs, and how to describe them in ways that's not gatekeeping, but also making sure folks understand what they're getting into or not getting into and why. And we haven't really figured it out because they're in surf culture, there's very much gatekeeping, where people are like, you don't belong at this break, you shouldn't be here. Yes, Courtney, exactly. Courtney brought up that some parts of kayaking culture can be really off-putting. For example, whenever we all get together, the main topic seems to be gnarly swims and rescues. And that's spot on exactly what I was talking about, David. That is a current conversation within my friend group. And there's two sides to that for the friend group that I am inhabiting in this conversation is, yeah, we talk about it a lot. It's when we're in a larger group of people, no one understands. And if we're with new paddlers, it's terrifying because the gap from where they are to where we are seems insurmountable and now not desirable. When we're with people who don't paddle, we sound crazy. Internally within the group, we're having those conversations in the best case scenario where it's 5 or 10 of us, all paddlers, all in the same, at least mental place about what we're doing. We're having that to try to decompress and understand what's been happening. But still, that's 5 to 10 people who have a very intimate understanding of a situation or possible situation. So yeah, I'm trying to not get, I'm still susceptible to getting on the tangents about kayaking too much. Doesn't go away. You can use that to kind of kick into the last part of the 4 things that kind of are barriers. That kind of conversation is off-putting, and it makes, I've been to many kayaking functions or paddling functions where we start nerding out about rivers, even if it's not gnarly swims and the Nar or like very obscure sections of river. People still are just like, I don't understand the jargon. I don't understand why you all love this so much. Like, and we close subconsciously, at best, we close the door of access to them by getting too deep into our community. Like, we're not being welcoming. We're not asking them, hey, do you understand what we're talking about right now? Would you like to? Like, or taking the time to be like, oh, he said he was like stuck in an eddy and he couldn't paddle out, explaining what that is. Because otherwise everyone's like, I don't understand who Eddie is and why is he holding on to you. There are definitely less innocuous ways to close the doors. And there are definitely less innocuous ways that things are expensive. And those are where we get into the bigger issues of racial and gender-based discrimination and sexual discrimination around preferences. And I don't not want to talk about this, but I there should be a hard line if that shouldn't be a thing. And I am not rose-tinted glasses about this, but for the paddling community that I see in my head, it shouldn't be an issue. For the people that I've spent my time with in my 12 years doing this, it shouldn't be an issue. But life is what it is, and we all have biases, either conscious or subconscious. Some are implicit, some are not. And so I also, like, trying to constantly reevaluate these things, because me saying that right now in 2022, definitely not the same human being that, say, in 2014 had to hear critique of like, hey man, you aren't necessarily the best at instructing women in hard whitewater. Like, you're technically skilled, you give good instruction, but you're not understanding how the experience is different for them. Or even with males, like, not some folks that don't have the same ideas, male or female, that have the same ideas about how you work through problems. And that is in paddling and in life. It's something where I constantly have to reevaluate how I work through problems, how I see the world is extremely different than how everyone else sees the world. And it's not like I'm a crazy person or anything. Not crazy, it's not a good word. I think about how I talk a lot. I think about how I interact with people a lot. I will text you after we have an interaction if I feel like I didn't accommodate the conversation well. If I feel like something I said may have gone over a line with you, or I feel like I may have offended you in a professional or not professional capacity, one of the things I work on in life is being the kind of person who's like, hey, I know we were paddling today, we were talking about this thing, and then we paddled off. But I was thinking about it later, and I don't think I was actually doing a good job explaining myself, and I hope I didn't offend you. How can we work through that? Yeah. No. Sorry, reading questions at the same.
I was just about to chime in with Danielle's comment, but you're at a good place where you can read it, Adam.
Okay. Yeah, so Danielle has this comment where saw an older man at class 2, mainly one takeout a few days ago, and asked him how his run was. And he immediately started explaining where the put-in was, what they had done, and that they had gone kayaking. They had dry tops and kayaks on top of their car or their truck. And it was super interesting that he just assumed I'd have no idea what he was doing or anything else as a small woman. Common. Yeah, definitely done that. Sorry. That goes back to this, or I think goes back to reflecting, leaving our assumptions at the door about people when we're interacting. And in most settings, in my experience and opinion, like leaving your assumptions at the door in a useful way, it does require a lot of thought. You can't just be like, oh, I assume you know what you're doing. It means that you have to literally think about how you're going to ask these questions. Like, if somebody shows up at, how long day at work? Somebody shows up at the takeout of a difficult run, and I don't know them, and they ask to go with me, I don't immediately just be like, yeah, you can come. It's awesome. Or, no, I don't know who the heck you are. Go find some friends. There's like this very stepwise progression of probing questions to figure out, like, how much do you know? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? But also there is it's awkward for both parties, but a polite, oh, do you kayak? Or do you do the thing? How long have you been doing the thing? And sometimes that feels weird to ask, in my opinion, but I think somewhere between the two should be the attempt. Like, yeah. Just have a lot of thoughts around that. The assumption that someone in a given space doesn't know what's going on in outdoor rec is fairly common, just because certain individuals show up somewhere and they don't fit the profile of what you think it is, and that's your personal internal view of who does the thing. And there is safety in that, in certain scenarios, and there is bias in that in a lot of other scenarios. And so navigating that is a very personal journey where you need to figure out how to talk to people in such a way that you can glean the information you need to feel comfortable, either directly or indirectly, and also be sensitive to the fact that you don't probably know that person's experience until you have a conversation with them.
I wonder, Adam, if that's a good segue to Antoinette, because I know you also have some. Well, I don't want to assume that you are done.
No, only thing I had was going to read Danielle's follow-up comment is that she was just out for a run and was asking how his river time was, and she's pretty sure he was just learning. So,
yeah. And honestly, one of the reasons why I thought it was a good segue to Antoinette, your presentation, is because I feel like you are masterful, sort of understanding all the different ways in which people can show up, right?
I hope so.
I think you are.
Thank you.
You are.
Adam and I have very similar philosophies, so it might feel like a little bit of an overlap. I think I'm going to take a slightly deeper dive on a few of those topics and hopefully don't bore you too much. I have a few visuals, so I have some slides that I will show. I'm not going to read the slides because you can do that yourself, but I'd ask that can everyone see the slides? You can just do a thumbs up. Perfect. So I don't know if you can see this, but it's recording what I'm saying. So I will try to ignore that. Don't know how to turn that off right now. So we're just gonna go with it.
Antoinette, that is you being as inclusive as absolutely possible. You just like to exude inclusiveness.
I think that's from a different presentation, but yay, we've got closed captions, I suppose. So I am joining you from northern Colorado. It's a little bit hard to look at my screen and you also, so I'll try to make eye contact as I'm looking at the slides. I'm joining you from northern Colorado, the ancestral home of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, Eastern Shoshone, Ochete, Shakowee peoples, and I'm excited about this talk because I love talking about outdoor recreation in general, paddle sports specifically, and conservation. Those are my jams. So let's get to it. As Deborah said earlier, I'm one of the co-founders of Diversify Whitewater, but I resigned from the organization a year into it, and I'll explain why. So it all started when my interest in promoting diversity in paddle sports. When I became a paddler, I showed up to learn how to kayak with a service dog, a walker, a traumatic brain injury, a spinal cord injury, and a full-time caregiver, and I could not even take care of myself at that time. And so I showed up at Team River Runner in North Carolina, and I said, I'm here to learn how to kayak. And they said, we can teach that, not a problem. And so while my service dog was losing her mind every time I went upside down in my kayak, I was taking advantage of the health and social benefits of outdoor recreation. And so today, my service dog is now just the family pet. I have disabilities, hidden disabilities. I like to call them differing abilities. Some people do call them disabilities that I have to manage, chronic health challenges I have to manage. And so my sort of position, how I show up in the world, is a person who came to kayaking in her 40s. I'll be 55 years old this year. So I'm middle-aged. I have multiple disabilities and health challenges. I'm a woman of color, and now I live where there's only about 3% diversity. So I almost never see another person of color just in my general life. not even in my paddling community. It's like a whole different story. So when I started helping with Diversify Whitewater, forming this organization with Lily Durkee, I was also assigned a 5-part series by Cultures Magazine because I'm a freelance writer in both the cross-cultural community, people who live in between cultures, someone like myself who's multicultural. I identify as Black and multicultural. And I've also lived all over the globe. So that means I'm in between, I live in between cultures, my birth culture and my global culture. And so I was assigned this piece to write about the social and economic impact of the lack of diversity in adventure sports for Cultures Magazine. And so I began interviewing people from all over the world, professional athletes, industry leaders, casual enthusiasts. And what I was learning at that time led me to believe that what we're doing with Diversify Whitewater is wonderful, but what do we do with people? How do we support them after we've introduced them to paddle sports? What next? That was my thought as we were creating the organization. And then after we had our first year of introducing 115 people to paddle sports, people would DM me because I talked to every single participant and every single volunteer. I learned everyone's story, where they came from before this event, what their relationship is to nature. For one, I'm curious about other people. That's why I write other people's stories. But also because I wanted to be helpful, and I couldn't be helpful if I thought I knew all the answers. I'm not actually going to help anybody because I've not walked a mile in their shoes. So I decided after the second year that I would resign from Diversify Whitewater because I saw a bigger mission that I couldn't accomplish within the framework of Diversify Whitewater. And so here's where I am today. I'm a freelance writer for Paddling Magazine as well as Cultures Magazine. I'm also a diversity, equity, inclusion task force member at America Outdoors. And I have an MBA, so I also consult and do business consulting. I call myself an accidental outdoor industry influencer, a micro influencer. But that gives me access to a lot of industry leaders and businesses who promote diversity in all of the adventure sports realm, not just paddle sports. And so through that, I've been able to create a channel that gives equitable representation to people from all aspects of diversity and formerly marginalized groups. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So what you can see here on the screen, I'm not going to read the data for you, but what you might notice is that the outdoor industry collects information about white men and women, about Hispanic and Black people, and they don't collect any data on Indigenous folks, on Asian folks, on people with disabilities, on the LGBTQ community. So if we want to diversify a sport, shouldn't we know what all the various flavors of diversity there is, how we are either reaching these people or not reaching these people? So when I think of diversity, I think of more than just ethnicity. I think of the fact that plus size explorers are often not welcome in our communities, in our outdoor recreation communities. I think about people with I have a hidden disability. So I could not share that with you. And you might think, oh, this is great. This woman showed up for kayaking and it's going to be awesome. But if my friend who has a lower body amputation shows up, I hear people say, oh, are we going to have to rescue this guy all day? So there are lots of formerly marginalized groups and underrepresented groups that make up this diversity framework. So if you live in Chilean Patagonia, the United Kingdom, the European Union, Malaysia, China, Hong Kong, you have access to no cost or low cost adventure sports training, gear, apparel, and equipment. And one of the, John, you might see your quote there, in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, like the United States, we don't have these. We have micro versions of it, like Diversify Whitewater and Outdoor Afro and Vibe Tribe Adventures, which you see here on the screen. But we don't have a nationally sponsored adventure sports network for people who can't afford to go out on their own and get the gear, apparel, equipment, instruction, set up safety, transportation, etc. All the things that make up your ability to recreate. And so I wanted to do something about that. So I am the producer of Whitewater TV. It's a for-profit business that donates money to diversifying adventure sports. We donate 2% of all subscription fees. We have content that's free. That's so that anyone who wants to learn how to recreate can find what do I need to do to get started hiking? What do I need? The basic equipment I need for ice fishing. We just published a segment on that last week. What are the basic requirements that I need to meet or skills I need to know to stand up paddleboard or kayak? So some of the content is free, but some of our premium content is at a cost, and we donate that to organizations like Vibe Tribe Adventures that helps people who are from primarily Black and Brown communities to recreate. But then Vibe Tribe Adventures noticed something that I was noticing at Whitewater TV. So there's a concept in book writing, in children's book writing. It's called mirror books and window books. And so I stole this concept, and I'm going to call it mirror marketing and window marketing. So in mirror marketing, I'm looking at someone who resembles me in some way. Maybe they have a disability. Maybe they're over 50. Maybe they're a woman. Maybe they're a person of color. And because I can identify with that person, that athlete that I'm viewing, I can make a short leap to that person with a disability can kayak. Why can't I kayak? So I'm going to get out there and learn too. So that's mirror marketing. Window marketing is I see a white man skiing, and I have to make that big leap to say, if this white dude can do this, I can do this. For a lot of people, that's very intimidating, and they can't make that big leap. So when little Black girls don't see people who look like me kayaking, it's a huge leap for her to believe that maybe she could do this too. It's a huge jump for her parents to believe that she can do that. And when her only image is of someone doing a sick 100-foot drop, mom and dad will not spring for a kayak for that. But when they see someone like me, who's a class 2-ish, maybe on a good day 3 minus boater, doing the thing, and I'm super posty on social media about my struggles and about my challenges and my setbacks and how difficult it is to learn to roll your kayak when your brain thinks up is down and left is right all the time, because I have had a brain injury. So when one of the barriers that is difficult to overcome is what you believe about yourself. So if in my family, we had the thought of Black people don't do that. Black people don't recreate. My siblings thought I was an embarrassment because I was outdoorsy. My whole life I had to fight with my parents, stay out of the sun, you're getting too Black. That's what poor people do. Why are you playing in the dirt? I bought you toys so you don't have to play in the dirt. It's called farming. I'm growing stuff. Well, okay, that's acceptable because you're producing food, but stay out of the sun. So like I had to overcome a lot, 10 years of fighting with my parents that no, you cannot become a bow hunter because someone's going to kill you in the backcountry. They don't want us there. And so for a lot of people of color, this is the thing that we hear in our communities. You're not a real Asian because you do too many white people things. So access to the outdoors does not mean that all problems are solved and you can recreate. So I have access to the outdoors. I have gear, equipment, and apparel. But I was hiking the other day on a public park on a trail, and I was running. There were 6 other white people there, but someone called the police on me because a Black woman with a cell phone and a water bottle who's running on a biking trail is dangerous, or whatever the situation. So it's not just about saying, hey, we're welcoming you into this community, it's going to be fine. If you have had experiences where you have been unwelcome in places where you should have been welcome, for example, when I was a corporate executive, I was in my corporate CEO finery, and I went into a high-end store to buy a new suit, and I was wearing a suit that's on a mannequin a few feet from me. And an associate said to me, "Can you afford to shop here?" And she brought security with her. So I got back in my car and was like, well, I guess I can't shop at that store anymore. But that also happens in the outdoors. So also the cost of gear, like Adam was saying, is a factor, but also transportation, lodging, time off work, childcare, elder care. So if you make everything completely free and you say to someone, like we're doing now with the American Adventure Sports Club, we're taking 10 high school seniors to guide school. I have to ensure that they have all of the gear, equipment, apparel that they'll need for school. I have to ensure that they have spending money for the trip, that they have transportation, that for some of them who have jobs that contribute to their family household, I have to make sure that that person being away from the household and not contributing for a week won't mean that that family can't pay a bill. So there's a lot to consider. So when you're thinking about how to be a good ally, it's not just saying, well, the river's here and it's free, or I'm tearing down the barrier, I'm bringing a dry suit, a helmet, a paddle, a kayak, and I'm going to teach you at no cost. There may be lots of other barriers, like some of these women in the photo are wearing clothes that belong to me. I had to help remove some barriers for them so that they could paddle this day, right? So there are a lot of hidden barriers that someone who doesn't identify with you may feel uncomfortable telling you about. So really taking into account the whole person that you're helping is very, very important. And people of color, people with disabilities, people who are low income earners, we don't just want to participate in outdoor recreation as just an enthusiast. We also want to work in the industry, in public facing jobs, not just service jobs that are sort of behind the scenes, like facilities maintenance and those kinds of jobs. We want to be kayak instructors also. We want to be raft guides. So what I envision for Whitewater TV is a platform that provides an equitable opportunity for all people to be showcased or highlighted. And the result of having a woman of color who is a TV producer online and on some smart TVs is that I was able in 1 year to get 5 people who from formerly marginalized communities sponsored. And it's because I knew how to talk to, as a micro influencer is what I'm called in the industry. I know how to talk to the companies who are looking for brands to say, this is why I think this athlete might be a good fit for your marketing campaign, for example. And so it's really important that we're not just diversifying paddle sports just for the sake of, because it's fun and I want you to enjoy the thing that I geek out on, right? It's also creating jobs. In Colorado, the outdoor industry is a 37 billion with a B dollar industry. But you see very few people of color that aren't doing maintenance and service jobs. So through Whitewater TV and my work with the American Adventure Sports Club, we're creating access for recreation, entrepreneurship, and jobs. And it's year-round programming, and I'll tell you what that's about in a moment. So when we're thinking about removing barriers and being a good ally, everything sort of falls into checking your biases, or being a good ally requires that you check your biases, like Adam was saying, and that you remember that no one wants to be your project. So if you are saying to me, Antoinette, I want to help you become a solid class 3 boater, get your roll down, you have to take the whole person into consideration. I'm athletic and fit, but I have had a brain injury. So if I don't pick up my paddle for 3 weeks, and this literally happened to me just 2 weeks ago, I hadn't held my kayak paddle in 3 weeks. I couldn't remember what the power face of my paddle was. That's how my brain injury presents itself. So if you get frustrated with me that I told you like 59 times in our last kayaking session that this is the power face, you can't teach me. So you have to think about the whole person, but you also can't infantilize me and make me into sort of like a child. That, okay, Antoinette, remember the power face? You can like ask me, do you remember what your power face is? Do you remember like all kinds of other things? And I'll say, yeah, we can just start, practicing rolling or sculling or some other skill. So it's really important to the way, as Adam was saying, the way that you talk to people is important. So if you look at the two photos here, both groups have, all three children have access to water. They have access to lake, river, reservoir, whatever the body of water is. So that's access. Both photos show access. Only the bottom photo shows effective support. So this little girl was from our Vibe Tribe Adventures Urban Trekker program last summer. And we taught them how to swim, kayak, raft, stand-up paddleboard, hike, climb, conservation, etc. But the difference is that when you just say, here is this thing, go and use it, but you don't ask, how else can I support you? What other barriers exist for you? Are your needs being met by our group, by our event? These kids have access to the river, but they don't have boats. She has a boat, but she didn't know how to paddle it. So effective support is not just creating access, not just creating an introduction. It's, okay, you've got me excited about this thing. Now what? How do I become a lifelong recreator? How do I become a working professional in this industry? How do I become an entrepreneur? So one of the things that makes me want to cringe is that I hear a lot of people say, I just want to save these young Black boys from drugs and gangs. Well, the assumption is that all Black youth live in environments where they're exposed to gangs and drugs. My brother never learned how to kayak, even though he went to summer camp where they taught kayaking. And he wasn't in danger of drugs or gangs. And both of our parents were in the home and we could afford it. But my parents didn't believe that outdoor recreation was for cosmopolitan Black people who made it off the farm. And that was their perspective. So I can't go into a Black community and say, I want to save you from drugs and gangs. It doesn't matter if it comes out of a Black face or a white face, it's just wrong. And it's a horrible assumption. And we are no one's savior. I don't need someone to save me as a spinal cord injury survivor or brain injury survivor, but I do need your help learning how to kayak. And that's the difference. Don't approach the person you're trying to help as their savior, is the moral of that story. So what do I think effective support, how do I think effective support looks? When I talk to people in other countries, what I noticed was effective was year-round support, public, private, nonprofit collaborations. That was effective at creating lifelong recreators who were also interested in conservation. So I talked to some really smart people who also all happen to be women and said, let's create some year-round programming that offers all formerly marginalized people, regardless of ethnicity, ability, orientation, or identification, but anyone who doesn't currently have access to recreate, who wants to recreate. We are a wealthy enough country and community to offer this. Less works together. So this is what's working for us. Vibe Tribe Adventures, where I sit on the board of directors, collaborated with Whitewater TV, where I'm the host of one series and also the executive producer, and the city of Loveland, where I am a Parks and Recreation Commissioner. We all got together along with some private citizens, and we're creating the American Adventure Sports Club. 75% of our club memberships will be open only to members of underrepresented and formerly marginalized communities. The other 25% is open to anyone and they will pay a fee, but it's free for everyone else. And here's why we're not making it exclusively just for people who can't afford to recreate on their own. The reason is this: anybody here play golf? Give a thumbs up if you do. Okay, when I was a very young woman, an older man said to me, if you don't know how to play golf, you need to learn, because many opportunities and decisions are made on the golf course that you will never hear about any other place. And so that exposed me to a whole different world than I had previously been exposed to, and opportunities. So when I left the Army, many people struggle. I think I forgot to say I'm an 11-year Army veteran, but many people struggled when they left the Army, even if they had a college degree, because they didn't know how to transition into the civilian community, and they didn't have networks that many of you may have developed when you're in college. Well, something that happened to me was, because I had a network that helped me learn about job opportunities that I could apply for. They also gave me letters of recommendation, and I walked out of the Army on a Friday and started my new job on Monday, earning twice what I was earning. You know, my income doubled over the weekend, basically. And so that opportunity of bringing together people from various socioeconomic circumstances who may not have otherwise met is a potential networking opportunity that they might not have exposure to in any other way. So instead of taking them out to the golf course to make business connections, we're taking them to outdoor recreation places where they can make connections with people who could potentially offer them a job, or might sit on a hiring committee, or might offer them a letter of recommendation because they know them from their adventure sports club. And so that's why we're making it 25% is open to a group that will pay. And the other thing I learned from the data is that even people who can afford to recreate, 24% of last year's new entrants into the sport, 24% said they would not continue recreating. I believe it's because they couldn't find community. It's very hard to break into a group of friends who all get together and paddle together, and you're kind of the new person in the community, and no one's inviting you to go paddle. So here's what we're offering at American Adventure Sports Club. Not everyone is going to love water sports. No matter how much you help them get over the fear or teach them how to swim, not everyone is going to love water sports. So we wanted to offer multiple sports. So there's, of course, going to be kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding, but also fishing and hiking, practicing leave no trace and catch and release principles, and developing conservation ambassadors. When I'm sitting on DEI panels, and we're talking about who has equitable access to water, or clean drinking water, or water to recreate in, there's almost never anyone without an advanced degree that's participating. There's almost never anyone that's a person of color that's not part of the panel discussion. And so when people start asking, well, why can't we attract more people of color? Why can't we attract people from various socioeconomic levels? And the reason is they're feeding their children at the time that you're having this event, or they're working and they don't have flexible jobs where they can just pop into a meeting for an hour and pop back and go back to work. If you don't have a connection to nature, it's hard for you to think about nature past what comes out of your water faucet. So I've been connecting outdoor recreation and adventure sports to conservation as a way of showing people, once you learn to love this sport, whatever the sport is that you choose, you can also start thinking of, how can I protect this place? How can I keep it clean? How can I keep it safe from like broken glass and things like that? So we're creating conservation ambassadors. And so the American Adventure Sports Club, the first order of business is our nature camp this summer for the youth. It begins in June and it ends in August. And at the end of this first cohort of students, of 30 students, they will know how to be somewhat independent recreators. They don't have driver's licenses because they're third through sixth graders, but they will know how to hike and fish and stay safe and read a map and use a compass and swim and archery. They'll be able to talk about conservation at an age appropriate level to their peers and family members. And we're doing it together as a community. So rather than creating an opportunity that's only for people of color, I'll be honest with you, that doesn't sit well with my philosophy, because in my belief system, I am as concerned about my happiness as I am concerned about Joseph's happiness, or Oren's happiness, or Samantha's happiness. So for me, doing something for this one group of people over here and telling these other group of people, you don't fit in this box, so I can't help you, just doesn't feel good to me. That's not a judgment on anyone else. I'm glad other people are doing that kind of work and that it feels good to them, and they should continue with it because it's needed and necessary. But that didn't feel good to me. What feels good to me is to help anyone that doesn't have access, to help anyone that has a need. That feels good to me. And it's mostly based on my belief system, not based on any, I don't think that I have all the answers, but this is just how I feel. And then also I felt it was very heartbreaking when a white person contacted me and said, I'm white and I'm poor and I can't afford to do this, and I will do absolutely anything if you let me come to this event. I spent way too many nights crying about that. So I feel like this is a better fit for just my, what feels like a good human being to me. So what's next? I'm not going to read this because you can find this all online and there's a link to it. But the plan is we start our nature camp in June. We start our full-time year-round American Adventure Sports Club, it will either be in June or September, depending on how our raft guide school program is coming along and other pieces, because we really want to roll this out slowly and deliberately, because we're taking this to every community that wants an American Adventure Sports Club in America. Everywhere that wants this club, we want to repeat this model of working with their local park system, working with their local community, using the same model that we did here in Northern Colorado to take this to every community that wants to do the same. And that's where we're being very slow and deliberate about how we do this, so that we can create these repeatable processes that we can just roll out to every community. You can learn more about the American Adventure Sports Club and what we're doing at this link here. There's my contact information. If you hit me up on social media or send me an email, I cannot promise you that I'll get back to you like tomorrow, but I will get back to you. And so at this time, I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen and take questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Antoinette, and thank you also, Adam. I don't think I thanked you before we segued over to Antoinette. It's remarkable what you have accomplished in just the last year. How many Diversify Whitewater events took place outside of Colorado?
Outside of Colorado, I think 8.
Okay, so in 2020, you and Lily created a concept called Diversify Whitewater. You hosted one event.
2.
You hosted 2. You had over 150 participants. The entire nation was, the entire nation, many people across the country were watching what you did. And then you were bombarded with requests from communities across the country saying, share the model, help us do it. 8 events took place. One of them hosted by Adam and many of us. And you thought to yourself, we can't just do events. We can't just do one-off events. We have to, fundamentally change the model for how we introduce the concept of being, engaged in active outdoors. And because you just couldn't help yourself, you literally, have been barnstorming across the country trying to get funding to create the American Adventure Sports Centers, and you're going to launch in Colorado.
Right. I just felt like it doesn't have to be either or. They are both very useful models. It is very helpful to give someone an introduction. The problem that I see it is not everyone's going to love kayaking or paddle sports. And how do we help them after the event? How do we get boats in their hands? How do we get paddles in their hands? How do we be supportive? And so when I learned what other countries were doing, I thought, well, why can't we do that here? Why can't we do that here, Elon Musk?
I'll make sure he gets the video.
Not for nothing, I wrote him. I don't know if he got my message, but I wrote him. I was like, here's what they're doing in other countries. Why not here? I wrote several celebrities, the wealthiest people in our country. I don't know if they'll ever answer me. I don't know if they even got my messages. But my dad would always say that it's only impossible if you think it's impossible. And if you think it's possible, you'll make it happen. So we're going to manifest that this is happening. This is done. Well, it is happening. We don't have to manifest it anymore. It's happening.
I'd like to piggyback on that for a quick second. I know we're coming close here on time or over time, but the amount of power to create change in your local community that every one of you has is only limited by your perception of what you think you can do. It can be as little as, and it doesn't have to be paddle sports. You buy somebody a cup of coffee that's having a bad day. I'm just trying to start it small to extrapolate that you can do whatever you feel like is navigate how it is approached to the person you're trying to help. But there's a group of us in the Portland area and my friend group that have been trying to be the change we want to see in the world simply through our personal actions. And it's nothing that we're going to go around and be like, hey, we're doing this, this, and this. But in our day-to-day lives, like that's just something that we decided to try and do. That could be helping in this conversation, that can be helping somebody with gear, that can be a ride to the river, being like, I'm going to be your paddling buddy or your adventure buddy. I don't care what you want to do. Like, if it's don't make them feel like that. Saying it that way will make them feel weird. Make it sound like it's the best day ever for you too. But meeting people where they're at and knowing that the smallest action, if timed correctly, can change somebody's life is huge. And I think that's, asking these individuals that have so much more resources than the rest of us have at our point in life, maybe one of them will respond. Or maybe, you see somebody that needs some gear and you hit up your paddling crew to be like, hey, if we each pitch in, $15-20, maybe we can get this person a paddle, or maybe we can get them a helmet. Like, you see that person on the river who's showing up with busted gear every weekend and they're there every weekend. You have an extra life jacket in your closet that's better than what they have. Let them borrow it at the very least or something. Whatever feels comfortable, but like, we are more capable to be change than we think. We just have to kind of like marinate on it for a little bit.
We have at least 2 questions in the chat. I want to try to get to both of them. Oh, and one new one coming in, but I'm looking at John Sue's question. I agree with everything that's said about lack of access and barriers, but I want to repeat what Adam said about lack of role models. No one looks like me is instructing me. Where are the paid guides that look like me teaching me? Where are the paid kayak instructors that look like me teaching me? And I had actually the flip side of John's question, because as you were talking, Antoinette, you really hammered home the point about hidden barriers, right? And you did it so beautifully. And you said, in essence, you have to understand that there are hidden barriers that someone that doesn't identify with you might not recognize, but someone that doesn't look like you might not be even willing to trust, right? With the knowledge and information.
With the question.
Yeah.
So imagine being a plus size person and asking, I've got chafing in my legs and we're on this hike. What do I do about it? Do you have anything? And you have to ask someone who wears a size 2, right? That's, whoa. A woman who's of East Indian heritage asked me, how do you maintain your hair and not get it all tangled when you're in the outdoors? But she would not have felt comfortable asking that of a white woman. And that's a big deal, because if I don't take care of my hair, if I don't detangle it every day, then when I come home, I have to cut it. Like, you're not detangling these curls after the fact. And she has the same problem. So it's really important to consider the whole person. And I really wanted to get to John and Shannon's question, and there's some overlap. Can we get to those?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, what can brands do to make things more inclusive? So Black Enterprise Magazine said, don't turn Black Lives Matter into Black Lives Marketing. And there's a lot of Blackvertising right now. And if you're a Black person, well, that might feel like, oh, great, people want photos of people who look like me, because, I'm 5'5" and I'm not a size 2. And so normally I am not anyone's idea of a model in general, let alone an adventure sports model. But brands contact me all the time and they're like, that photo's great. Can I buy it from you? Like, that's a thing. And so, but they are also genuine. And I don't work with any brands that don't have a complete and complex diversity program. So if you just want to do Blackvertising, I'm not your girl. we can't work together. And if you are just if you want to use my black face to sell products, but you won't hire someone with a black face, I have a problem with that and I won't work with you. So brands have to look at their marketing strategy and ask themselves, do all of the potential people that could buy my products, and remember, almost 40, I think 43% will identify like I do. I identify as multicultural and Black. Nearly half of your millennials right now are identify as multicultural. They not necessarily Black, but multicultural, right? So if you are marketing to people and it's not in an authentic and genuine way, that I have Black employees, I have Indigenous employees, I have Hispanic employees, and models. And then the other aspect of it is authentic models. So I remember looking at an advertisement because I'm a bow hunter, and this woman was, she looked like Adventure Sports Barbie. And I'm like, oh, Adventure Sports Barbie is adorable, but she doesn't know how to use a bow. Because if you did use a bow, you wouldn't hold it like that. You wouldn't have that look on your face. You can't have 70 pounds of tension and look like this very calm, placid look. You're like, you have to be, your face would be under some tension too, right? So, I think what brands can do is just be authentic. Think about the spectrum of diversity. So not just all Indigenous people, not just all Asian people or Hispanic people or Black people, but people with disabilities also, people who are plus size also. So it needs to be comprehensive. It's wonderful if you only want to buy my photos. It might be wonderful for me, but it won't make me sleep good at night. I won't feel good about myself if you're not hiring Adam, if you're not hiring Courtney, So I think having an authentic diversity strategy in both your hiring and in your advertising is a really good start. And it's not just enough to have models of color. That's just not enough. That's not going to make me buy your product because I'll see through it.
I can piggyback on that. One of my longest jobs at this point in my life is I am a professional actor and model and photographer and other things. And there's the question kind of was like piggyback through how, brands are starting to, we have greenwashing, we have blackwashing, folks are trying to tick the diversity box in a variety of marketing forums across all industries. And I personally, I do benefit from that. That is one of my jobs. It's one of my full-time jobs. And I've watched and experienced a very marked increase in interest in what I look like. That's, for like, a joke among us is like, I'm a walking coat hanger. And sometimes people like a walking coat hanger.
Oh.
You put clothes on us that, like Antoinette was saying, you can hire authentic people to do the thing, or you hire models. And the issue historically with hiring models has, for better or worse, has been like, they may not know how to do what they're supposed to be doing. But they check the box of what they're supposed to look like for that. So now over the last, 5 to 8 years, in the larger brands, there has been a very big push to start hiring authentic models who can do the thing. And there's a lot of reasons for that in the industry. Some of them are great. Some of them are just pure capitalism, where you take the emotion out of it and they're like, we need people that look like this, that know how to do this so that we can sell to this demographic. And how you feel about that is a separate conversation. That's kind of how those things are working. In the paddle sports industry, I am, from what I have experienced and what I know over the last several years, I'm happy to say a lot of the brands that you know, if you go out and look, are putting in the quote unquote work about, you know, increasing access, increasing diversity, are not pulling away from, putting as much effort into authentic marketing and authentic individuals. They're finding folks, they're not focusing solely on like how big, how hard, how fast can you do things. They're finding people who are actually out, like, I go out on the weekends and I have a good time. I use this gear because it helps me get out there. And to kind of rewind a bit to where I was saying, like, there are some aspects of this art that are pure or logical, objective marketing. You can't sell or influence people or draw people to any of these sports if all you do all the time is show one kind of person doing one completely crazy thing that a very small percentage of the entire user base will ever do. Like, we love to watch the X Games, we love to watch the Olympics, but it's a very small percentage of the population. And yeah, there is also a small percentage that will buy that like name brand item all the time, but like most of the people are going to do the thing a few times when they're feeling really good, or they're going to keep it at the level where like, yeah, I tried to paddle like class 3-4, I didn't really enjoy it, I like to paddle class 2, or I tried stand-up paddleboarding, I'd rather be in a sit on top kayak, or like I tried trail running, I'd rather go for a walk. Like, there's, I'm very much trying not to sound jaded about it, but there is a calculus to how what you see gets in front of you. And there are amazing people behind the scenes putting in as much work as Antoinette, as much work as me, and more. And there are other people who are very objective and understand how to tick boxes. So I think with piggyback on what Antoinette is saying is like, I think both of us have a lot of experience with navigating that, and we have our metrics for how we decide who we want to work for. I, full disclosure, have been doing this or doing modeling and acting for so long. I do have my personal metrics, and that's not necessarily something I'm going to get into here. But I do a lot of work with a lot of brands, and it comes out of a thing. All the way back to what I said at the beginning, is like, this aspect, this journey in my paddling career is, you know, been several years in coming, but it's definitely been gaining speed over the last like 3 or 4 years. And that came out of a series of very important to me friendships, where a very close friend of mine said, if you can't see it, you can't beat it. And he was like, you're the only Black dude I know that does this at this level. He's like, I know you say you know XYZ other dudes who do the same thing as you, but they're not out there. No one knows who they are. He's like, so any little Black kid, any little Black boy that wants to run, you know, the most famous waterfall in the gorge, they're going to see a photo of you before they see a photo of anybody else. And he's like, if you don't figure out how to do that in a way that you can like sleep well at night when you can't do that shit anymore, then maybe you should reevaluate why you're doing it.
I'm mindful of the time.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah. Yes.
So that's why I jumped at the opportunity when I was writing this article, and XOTV was talking to Cultures Magazine, and Cultures Magazine said, I have this writer who's working on this series and it's going to be, well, great. And then they said, you need to make this a channel. The industry, before I published an episode, the paddle sports industry was like, I'm going to sponsor your channel. I'm going to sponsor you. I'm going to give you products. So I can give away free gear because of the generosity of the outdoor industry sponsors. I have a series on Whitewater TV called What's Up, and it's an instructional based stand-up paddleboard series that's being taught by certified stand-up paddleboard instructors. And so we're giving away a complete head-to-toe set, including a paddleboard. And so the important point is that because all of you support me and Adam and people like us, you follow us on social media, some of you. I recognize some of you here. I recognize some of you from other settings. When you follow us on social media, when you support our work, when you read Adam's articles or you buy from brands that he's photographed, he's a model for, and other things, it gives us influencers the opportunity to reach back and help other people. So every Thursday, on the last Thursday of the month, I have a Black and Brown adventure sports support group where at no cost, you just show up at Antoinette Toscano on Instagram Live if you're a person of color, and you come and ask your questions about. So we have a topic that we talk about this coming Thursday. It'll be how to start hiking and camping. And so we cover it from you're just getting started, you don't know anything, all the way to how do I summit or learn to summit a 14,000 foot peak, because we have a lot of them in Colorado. And this is for, worldwide. We have people joining us from all over the world. This will be our second event, and we answer questions. Last time we answered, how do I become a sponsored athlete? How do I become a brand ambassador or get on a paddling team? Because if you have a 20-year history in a sport, you can teach other people. I have 7 years in this industry, but I've learned a lot and I have a lot of access. And so I'm just giving away that knowledge, but that's the only way that a lot of people have to learn. I don't know if you all know Sadat Kawawa. He was in 18 or 19, he was named number 5 kayaker in the world. He's a Black man from Uganda. I interviewed him several times and I got to know him. We became friends. Now we're both on Kokatat's brand ambassador team. But I helped him get more visibility on Whitewater TV, and number 5 kayaker in the world. People love him, like all the brands loved him, but he kept falling off their radar. So because I had this platform, I could say, here's a pedestal, get on it, and then shop him around. Look at him. He's an amazing human being. He's got great character. He's uber photogenic. Can you sponsor him? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, we love him. Yes, of course, So now he's off to the races. And so I just wanted to be able to do that for as many more people as possible. And so that's why we started this free event, and other BIPOC industry athletes and enthusiasts and nonprofit leaders join me in the conversation. So they're not just learning from me, they're learning from lots of people. And so that's another way that we can help people go from, I don't know anything, but that looks great and I'd like to do it too, to I've made it.
You've made it indeed. I'm so glad that you said that, Antoinette, about the sponsorships and the degree to which brands can also literally just support the work, right, that's being done in local communities. Because when at the beginning of the answer to Shannon's question about how do brands, in the paddle sport industry, how can they help? We went to, okay, well, let's evaluate marketing and make sure the marketing is authentic. And in my mind, I was like, oh, why are we talking about marketing? Brands should just be supporting the work that's happening locally. And then by the end of the conversation around marketing, I was like, of course, they have to be doing authentic marketing so that people can see themselves represented in these, because these brands have these ginormous platforms. And of course, we need and want to show a wide array, diverse array of folks using their gear. Yes, they must change their marketing. No, but they also have to support local efforts. Oh, Antoinette just made the point that she has, when we support local efforts, we give Antoinette a microphone, as big, not as big yet, but you call yourself a micro influencer. You're on the verge of being a medium influencer. You might even, so it's just like the entire, it's all, I'm leaving this discussion thinking, what I thought when it began, which is we have to just attack it at every single level possible and just not stop until we see the
In
world
many different ways.
in many different ways. You all have demonstrated that so eloquently for us tonight, and given us so much to think about. I thank you so, so much for your time. We always record the talks. Tonight was no exception. So the recording for the talk will go out to anyone who was with us, anyone who had to drop off early, and anybody who, expressed interest and registered, but for whatever reason wasn't able to be here. When we share the recording, we'll also share links back to Adam's article and to Antoinette's work so that you can stay engaged and stay in touch. And you can also, absolutely shoot questions to the Lower Columbia Canoe Club. If you have, follow-up questions, you want to make sure we get to the speakers, we can absolutely do that. So with that, thank you.
Thank you all. Feel free to email both of us or hit us up on social media. I know I have like a week delay on replying right now. I'm very behind, but I will reply. And if you send me a reminder to reply, I will reply faster.
Wow. I remember when I first reached out to Antoinette over email or social media or something, I got back from you, Antoinette, a very measured, I get lots of requests for my time. And that just made me want to talk to you even more. I was just like, well, I will wait.
I'm so glad that came out the way it was intended, but I was, like because I have a brain injury, my day has to end at like 3:00. So to do this now, I had to hook my brain up to an alpha wave stimulator so that I can string words together at this hour of the evening. Like, managing a brain injury is tough. So if I don't get back to you, it might be that I've had some kind of problem, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But I'm also really busy too. So
maybe that there's a hidden barrier, which we learned a lot about tonight.
Yep.
Thank you so much for getting back to me at the beginning of 2021, Antoinette. I'm just like,
thank you.
So grateful that you did. We're going to keep working on this together.
I'm actually glad that I got to be here with Adam. So I said this to Adam before. I know it's embarrassing. I'm going to say it again. I'm a fan of Adam's work. I read his work before I even, before he ever was one of the co-hosts of Diversify Whitewater events. I had already read your articles, and just all over his Instagram profile. If you're not a fan, please find him on social media. It will enrich your life. But I'm glad to have been here with you today, Adam. This was really just wonderful, and I knew that we were going to be like on the same page about so many things. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. I've definitely followed you along for the last couple of years as well. It's been awesome to see all your things you're doing, and I'm very excited for the clubs. I was very like, oh, here we go. When that's the next logical step. It takes a village, and you got to do all the things to get everybody on board.
I can't help myself. I want to jump on the little love fest here and say that it is true, Adam, I'm sorry, but if you follow Adam on social media, it will enrich your life.
It might get weird.
Whatever. You shared on social media an excerpt from a poem probably 3 years ago. The guy who wrote a poem a day.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember? Oh my God.
It's a lot of early mornings.
And it's like everybody like hates social media. You want to get off social media. And then some guy that you barely know named Adam Edwards shares an excerpt from a poem. And you're just like, oh my God, my life has changed. That poem changed my life, just so you know.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Landed at the right time. All right, you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Antoinette, go unplug your brain.
Yeah, that I'm proud of myself.
You should be.
I put sentences together after 5 o'clock. This is awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, folks.